When it comes to the entirety of DC, its history, its scaling, its cosmology, I can see why many people find it frustrating and complicated to try and get involved inside all of DC. In order to take on the DC multiverse, not to mention everything beyond it, you have to first understand the most significant events in all of DC to drive the point home on just how wild the DC existence really is. The problem with doing that is that DC's history is very expansive, and they have decades upon decades upon decades of history you have to catch up on. So listing absolutely everything for one video would be a monster of an experience. But since I'm your boy Lumos Theromax, you already know I've got you the hookup, and I'm here to deliver the most essential DC events in a cohesive timeline throughout all of DC's very long history for you, my viewers, my fellow lanterns of the Theromax Corps. So let's answer the question: what events or moments are the most important to DC's true overarching canon timeline? Let's find out. What's up, guys? It's me, Lumos Theromax, and today we're actually talking about some of the coolest stuff ever, a full timeline of absolutely everything inside of DC. And be sure to like and subscribe to the channel or become a Theromax Corps member today to continue sponsoring banger-ass videos like this one just for fans like you. And we're not wasting time on this bad boy. Become a member today. Now let's get straight into it. Let's get into this DC timeline. But back to the main point, let's discuss the most important events inside DC's history. First off, we enter the pre-crisis, or it's not as commonly known as, the pre-crisis on Infinite Earths era of the timeline. What's all fits inside this segment of history? Well, everything that occurred before the first crisis, the crisis on Infinite Earths, fits inside the pre-crisis era of time, hence the name, duh. Most eras, however, take place within the confines of the main DC multiverse, and believe it or not, some things existed even before our multiverse, such as the greater Omniverse. So let's start this little chat here, beginning with where things began long before even the event that spawned the DC multiverse. In the beginning, there was nothing, an infinitude of nothingness and darkness. This nothingness became known as the Great Darkness, but only after the light came too, and the darkness shuddered in response. The light being referenced here is the greater Omniverse as it expanded, and is also what many may refer to as what we call now the Overvoid. In the Overvoid, creations rise and fall, but today we choose to focus on one multiverse inside the Overvoid. One creation, arguably the most important across the entire greater Omniverse. Of course, I refer to the main DC multiverse we all know and love. But before space, time, gods, imagination, or any form of lower existence is born, Perpetua, a celestial creator and hand of the source, is dispatched into the Overvoid with a powerful artifact known as the Totality. The Totality contains the power she was given by her masters, the judges of the source in the presence, who gave her a goal of creating a multiverse with the connective or positive properties with a splash of crisis energies on top of that. However, Perpetua created her multiverse predominantly with crisis energies instead of connective ones, creating a flawed multiverse. This was on purpose because Perpetua had the intent to create a perpetual multiverse that would feed on others with its selfish desire to survive forever. Her twisted multiverse now born, and along with it came Perpetua's children, the Anti-Monitor, the World Forger, and the Monitor, as well as all concepts in the multiverse, as well as the matter that came with them. After much experimentation came her prized and beloved human-Martian hybrids, the Apex Predators. Perpetua rules this new multiverse with the intent to build an army to overthrow her masters, but decides to hide this agenda from her children, the Brothers 3. This era is known as the prior Multiverse Era. Now that time manages to exist since creation has. 15 billion years ago from DC's current day, the first major cosmic event after the multiverse's origin occurs. After several billion years of maintaining existence, the Monitor questions the purpose of Perpetua, and she does not like being questioned. After all, he looked out into the multiverse and saw no other creations with the celestial creator like Perpetua. After being scolded by his mother, he seeks out his fellow brothers, the World Forger and the Anti-Monitor, and convinces them they need to reach out to the judges of the source, the masters of Perpetua, about her betrayal of her function in creating this multiverse. The Brothers 3 then craft a massive cosmic tuning fork to call upon the judges of the source all the way on the far side of the void from our multiverse. The judges of the Source immediately dispatch the all-powerful Cosmic Raptor, who arrives to confront Perpetua for her crimes. The Cosmic Raptor auto-seals Perpetua and the totality inside the newly created structure around the multiverse known as the Source Wall. She's here so she can learn from the soon-to-be reborn multiverse for all of eternity for her twisted ways. The ultimate apex predator she praised and raised are then sealed on this newly formed Source Wall, becoming the Source Titans we recognize in the current day. The Brothers 3 all return to their home realms to be reborn, and the Anti-Monitor is angered with the wall, the Source Wall itself having destroyed his purpose, as he can no longer stop things from leaving creation, and this wall does so. As a result, he vows revenge against his brother, the Monitor. Afterwards, the Presence creates the Archangels, and they reboot creation on the bones of Perpetua's creation. Rebooted creation begins, and this begins the era known as the pre-crisis era, 10 billion years ago. In this new multiverse, a singular universe is born, and in it, the first and most powerful civilization in the universe rises. They soon become known as the Malthusians, and among them the most advanced and skilled are selected to become more than even the greatest Malthusians. These extremely powerful Malthusians took the mantle known as the Guardians of the Universe, and were altered beyond their former brethren. Their science was just as unparalleled as their mental abilities, and they grew to be wildly powerful beings in a universe too young to support other highly advanced life. But among them, as the years went on, came to be a powerful and arrogant scientist known as Krona. Krona's experiments take him to the dawn of time, where he sees an all-powerful hand forming creation. Krona, viewing this event, fractures our singular event into an infinite multiverse, creating infinite worlds in DC's cosmology and the cosmological structure known as hypertime. This event was the first time we had seen the creator's hand in the new multiverse, and no one knew what or who it was, but in reality it was actually Perpetua's hand from the prior multiverse first forming it. Krona is struck by a divine bolt of energy and cursed for all of time. But the damage had been done. Krona had set in motion a variety of things unknowingly, allowing evil to seep into the multiverse and cracking the door open to the antimatter universe, which becomes wildly relevant later on. The Guardians of the Universe then run into a mad traveler called Volthoom, who wipes out most of the Guardians of the Universe and Malthusians. They used his travel lantern to form the first Green Lantern rings in existence, but were terrified of the power of emotions and lacked them as a result of removing them. As a result of this, the Guardians of the Universe create an army of Manhunter robots to maintain existence after the capture of Volthoom. It is also important to note that by this time with Volthoom, we have the races of Kryptonians, Coluans, which are the Brainiacs people, the Tamaranians, the plant elementals utilizing the powers of the green, and the new gods of Galactica, or the Third World, had already begun being established at this point in time as major universal powers, or at least starting to spread throughout the universe. The Earth begins to form, and the Traveler, also known as the White Lantern entity of life itself, nests within the Earth after birthing all life in the universe. This is something the Guardians of the Universe discover and go to great lengths to protect. They even hid this truth from the rest of the universe, claiming all life comes from Multus. They also begin to create a very long quest to remove most of the magic from the entire universe, as they saw most magics, specifically necromancy, as inherently evil and forbidden. They do this in order to create order in the universe, but they do leave Earth untouched in this wildly crazy onslaught as to not disturb the wildly powerful life entity Slumber, as affecting the entities is to affect everything, all life itself, something they are not willing to do. An undesignated amount of billions of years ago, Krona returns, and he begins tampering with the Manhunter robots by altering their logic centers. The Manhunter's job was to create order, and Krona convinced them chaos comes from emotion, and so they turned on all those they planned on protecting, since all of them had emotion, as everyone alive has emotion. They managed to murder everyone in all of Space Sector 666 but 5 people. The Guardians of the Universe forsake the Manhunter robots for their lack of humanity and emotions as a result. They begin to utilize emotional weaponry based on the original rings they formed from Volthoom's travel lantern, and form the Green Lantern Corps, based on the emotion of willpower. They chose the emotion of willpower as it's the center of the emotional spectrum, and thus the most balanced of all of the emotions in its entire spectrum. The Guardians of the Universe spend many years after this attempting to fix the flaws of the original rings and begin utilizing batteries that are actually created on Oa by the Guardians. They seek to guard the universe from this point on to make up for all of Krona's crimes against existence. 50,000 years ago, Homo sapiens challenge all the other races on the surface of Earth, which affects which species will become the dominant figures on this planet from this point on. Also at this point in time, totality fragments and nth metal managed to strike Earth all at the same time, causing earth-shattering events later on in the time stream. These events build on Crisis the longer on we go down that time stream, and as time develops, the Homo Magi, a race of mutants that are capable of utilizing magic, slowly begin to branch off of the Homo sapiens and both begin to live on the planet Earth. 40 to 45,000 years ago, the Homo sapiens and Homo Magi managed to create the super state of Atlantis and have been a world power for over half of a decade before the fall of Atlantis and the death of its greatest sorcerer king, King Arian. This forces many Atlanteans to migrate to the surface of Earth and other planets or even dimensions, separating them from Earth and their original people for a considerable amount of time. Most of the Homo Magi are lost as a result of this, but some still continue on the planet. 7 to 3,000 years ago, recorded human history manages to begin. Superheroes actually begin to appear, such as in Egypt with Nabu, Ibis, Shazam, and Khufu, and they begin to interact with humanity directly. The era of the Greek gods was also during this time frame, giving birth to many demigods and beginning more of an interaction between those in the Skylands and the sphere of the gods with Earth and its people. Even in Europe, Camelot rose to power and then later failed due to the actions of higher powers. As the Dark Age rose, metahuman heroism also rose to combat it, leading to a violent new century full of war. With the dawn of the 20th century comes constant global war on Earth, which leads to the Age of Heroes, with World War I and World War II occurring. In Earth 2, just one of the many Earths or universes that make up the infinite amount that came from Krona's actions prior, the legendary Justice Society of America was formed, giving us our golden age or classic superheroes such as Old Man Soups, Wonder Woman, Jay Garrick, The Flash, and Alan Scott the Green Lantern, not to mention the many other characters that were on these teams as well. But on Earth 2's World War II, man, tongue twister, we saw a variety of significant events, including the return of the Spectre after his banishment, the rise of Hitler, and Hitler's use of the Spear of Destiny, which managed to damage and threaten everything in creation. However, in Earth 1, most notably known as the main canon, or where the main DC universe is located, the heroes didn't form yet. After all, they didn't exist quite yet, although everything on their Earth had been happening similarly up until this moment. About 20 years ago in the DC timeline, the current Age of Heroes starts in Earth 1, with the coming of Superman after the destruction of Krypton, Batman after the death of his family, Wonder Woman after the plotting of the gods, and many, many, many more heroes afterwards, all the ones we know in the main DC universe. After many adventures, they even discover the infinite multiverse that exists outside of their singular universe due to Krona's time experiments, because they became seasoned heroes. But a scientist named Pariah from a multiverse destroys his universe accidentally by tapping into an antimatter cannon, which manages to reawaken the Anti-Monitor from his slumber. The Anti-Monitor sought vengeance on his brother, the Monitor, for his actions before this version of the multiverse, for their actions in creating the Source Wall. The Anti-Monitor was also influenced and manipulated by Perpetua from within the Source Wall to trigger the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. She wished to make a crisis event that would weaken her almighty prison, the Source Wall, and so her son was the perfect tool to do so. It was then that the Anti-Monitor destroys the infinite amount of Earths in the infinite multiverse, leaving but one universe remaining as a result of his actions. This universe managed to be a combination of several combined universes thanks to the works of the Monitor, all of them consolidated into one, including Earth 1 and Earth 2, with the JSA or Golden Age superheroes and their timeline being blended into the history and timeline of Earth 1. This helped rectify and consolidate some of the confusing continuity leading up to this point in DC's overarching history. This event ends the pre-crisis era and begins the post-crisis era, hence the name. The pre-crisis multiverse, however, its carcass managed to fall into the Great Darkness, where it sits for quite some time. But don't worry, we'll be coming back to that later on. An undesignated amount of time ago, during the events of post-crisis, the Great Darkness is beckoned to creation by a wildly powerful cult, and it arrives here, annihilating anyone who manages to get in its way during the events of Swamp Thing. The Great Darkness is entirely foreign to any concept of what is or what existence is, and learns from those who it interacts with while here. The Great Darkness is eventually visited by Swamp Thing, who gives them a philosophical big brain conversation, and his words move the Great Darkness, which causes the ultimate cosmic handshake of destiny between the forces of the Great Darkness and whoever you think the light is. This creates a truce between both of these figures, with rules that the light shall no longer shine as bright or expand via what is, aka create more worlds, so that it doesn't harm the Great Darkness, as the more something grows, the less nothing there is. And that's all the Great Darkness is the nothingness before anything came. Both parties seem rather happy with this agreement and continue onward coexisting with one another, and as a result, existence itself is different, no longer with the intent to harm one another. But the Great Darkness then returns to sleep. Even as it slumbers, however, it unintentionally exerts its influence to destroy creation as it's harming him. This causes many villains throughout existence in this time frame and beyond to continue attempting to destroy creation despite being unaware of any connection to the Great Darkness, anybody manipulating them, or anything along those lines. In undetermined time during the post-crisis era, as the 90s occurred in the real world, DC editorial decided it was time for a new era of heroes and began their plans to shake up and change up most of the status quo of pretty much all of DC. First off, it was Superman and the League, who came across a wildly powerful monster known as Doomsday, and they barely managed to survive, only at the cost of Superman's life. This began a short era where there was no Superman, but that didn't stop many Superman clones from attempting to replace Superman, and it was only a matter of time before the original Superman returned stronger than before and reclaimed his mantle back from any of these clones. Following that, it was Hal Jordan, the modern Green Lantern, who also suffers a tragic fate, losing Coast City, his hometown, to a massive explosion from Mongol, and begins to fall prey to the very concept of fear that was planned by his former mentor Sinestro. It warps and distorts his perspective until he destroys the entire Green Lantern Corps, eliminates all of the Guardians of the Universe in search for enough power to revive Coast City from the dead, and he now calls himself Parallax as he wanders back into the universe. In undetermined time during the post-crisis era, after a variety of brutal battles with all sorts of heroes and villains, Parallax accidentally finds himself thrown into the time stream. Parallax had found the Crisis on Infinite Earths event during the time stream and began absorbing all the crisis energies that were given off by the event, as well as the chronal energies of the time stream, to become absurdly powerful enough to create a crisis event. He then recruits Extant to his cause, as he creates entropy waves that destroys everything that is. The last heroes surviving band together to fight the maddened former hero. The heroes had to recreate existence from what Parallax planned on using to reboot creation in his image, saving creation in this 0-hour crisis event. Barely victorious, our heroes managed to reset time before the events happened, leaving many not even aware that this happened canonically, and entire histories and pasts were altered due to all the time shenanigans, leading to a soft reboot of many characters that existed up until this point in time, consolidating things once more. In undetermined time after the events of 0 Hour, a Sun Eater arrives to Earth with an intent to consume their sun after defeating all of our heroes' greatest attempts to stop it from doing so. Now with Superman powerless, in a last-ditch effort, Kyle Rayner, the Green Lantern of this era, manages to reach out to Parallax Hal, who investigates the situation. In one final act of redemption, he throws all his power at the Sun Eater, destroying it, but at the cost of his own life. However, back on Earth, Jim Corrigan, the Spectre, saves the soul of Gaia as it was dying from the lack of warmth due to the Star Eater's intent. The combined efforts of Hal and the Spectre save Earth despite everything going on. It's then that Gaia tells the Spectre of Hal's action, and it makes the Spectre think about him and potential redemption. After finishing his soul-searching adventure, Jim Corrigan finally moves on to heaven, and after a bit of a rampage without a host, Hal Jordan is later on selected to house the Spirit of Vengeance and becomes the Spectre, so that the Spectre can attempt to purify Hal Jordan's soul. During an undetermined time after this last event, we find out that Hal becoming Parallax was actually the work of his former mentor Sinestro, as well as the reveal that Parallax is actually the conceptual being of fear that had infected Hal Jordan's soul and made him do all the crazy things he did. The Spectre himself had been attempting to remove Parallax from his soul, and with the help of Hal Jordan and a lot of other crazy things, they managed to actually do so. Hal Jordan then returns from the dead and frees himself from his role as the Spectre. The Spectre finds a new host in Crispus Allen afterwards. During this time frame, the Green Lantern Corps and the Guardians of the Universe are reborn due to Ion Kyle Rayner's immense power, and we canonically invent the concept of the emotional spectrum thanks to Jeff Johns in this little specific point in time. An undetermined time after the last event, Earth 2 Superman, Alexander Luthor, and Superboy Prime are all disgusted with the new reality that was saved during the Crisis on Infinite Earths event, aka the post-crisis timeline. They think that these heroes wasted the chance they were given in this new world, and that they had sacrificed their chance at having their world as a result. Superboy Prime shakes up all of reality with reality-altering punches from their Paradise Prison dimension, which affects all of continuity, leading to all sorts of different changes in characters' origins and histories. Eventually, Alexander and Prime begin to make secret missions into reality with intent to return the universe to its more heroic and classic roots by creating the former multiverse in this major Crisis on Infinite Earths event. An infinite amount of worlds are formed, bringing back the infinite multiverse to reality once more before the heroes overcame the quote-unquote villains in this arc. During an undetermined time in this era, the Monitor Mind sends Dax Novu, the Monitor, to investigate our specific multiverse, for it was very unique. Dax Novu arrives and witnesses the stories of our multiverse while mapping it, and is splintered into two halves. Dax's other half, the Cosmic Armor, seals the multiverse's stories so that it cannot expand further, and the armor has sat on nil ever since. Dax then spends time raising the monitors of Nil, who heralded him as a legend, eventually fearing that he would succumb to the corruption of the very stories that he had investigated. Dax is banished to the Dark Pit, where he is influenced by a being called the Great Darkness. Also an undetermined time in this specific era as well, Mr. Mind, the villain of Shazam, gets an amped form, calling himself the Hyperfly, and tampers with the time and worlds of the multiverse by devouring many of them. Afterwards, the Monitors are dispatched by the Light to then govern over this new orrery of worlds and maintain only 52 worlds in this new orrery, to respect the deal the Light had with the Great Darkness on the limiting the expansion of what is versus what isn't during the events of Swamp Thing. They did so to try and keep him from waking. An undetermined amount of time after the events of Infinite Crisis, Sinestro gathers an army of the most terrifying warriors in the universe, forming them into a new corps, one of fear. Sinestro breaks Superboy Prime free from his prison and allies himself and his corps with the Anti-Monitor as they wage war against all of reality with the intent to control the multiverse from the original Earth. Superboy Prime is teleported back to his home Earth, but only after he punches the Anti-Monitor into space. The Anti-Monitor's essence is grabbed by an unknown faction and is sealed into a very large Black Lantern battery. The secret of the 52 and the multiverse beyond is kept hidden by the Guardians of the Universe as best they can, but certain characters begin to find out, such as Cyborg Superman. After the events of Sinestro Corps War, all of reality begins to fail as the new gods all die in death at the new gods, and reality continues to be damaged and fall apart and count down to final crisis. Darkseid continues his invasion of Earth, seeking to remake the entire multiverse as his new home by using the absurd powers of the anti-life equation to control all of life. Darkseid was defeated by Superman going full Jack Black and singing at Darkseid to defend creation from within the multiverse. But from outside the multiverse, a new threat to existence was arriving and needed heroes to fight it as well. The Supermen of the multiverse were summoned by the Monitors, and from them, we chose two to become the Cosmic Armor Superman. The Cosmic Armor Superman then defended all of the stories inside DC from the corrupted Monitor Dax Novu, who is now calling himself Mandrak. After a brief battle, Mandrak is defeated by the Cosmic Armor Superman after he casts him out into the Overvoid. The Cosmic Armor Superman then defuses and Superman returns to creation to fire the Miracle Machine, a Hail Mary attempt to wish the problems affecting the entire cosmology away. The 52 Monitors who governed creation are erased upon firing the Miracle Machine, but it does solve all remaining problems for everyone, ending the final Crisis event. And editor's note, yo, this is just a name, it is not the last canon Crisis event, there's way more to come, don't worry, so don't be clicking off now. And Nil, the home of those Monitors, is actually dragged into the multiverse due to the Miracle Machine firing, and existence continues as a result from here. An undetermined time after the events of Final Crisis, life in all of DC is threatened again, as the dead return to torment and destroy all life in the multiverse with the rise of the Black Lanterns and their leader Necron, having been missing from DC, returning once more. The secrets of the emotional spectrum and the prophecy of the Blackest Night are revealed during this event known as the Blackest Night. The Guardians are criticized for hiding the fact all life in the universe came from Earth through the concept of life, aka the life entity, which is hidden here. At the end of the event, many heroes and villains are reborn due to the life entity resurrecting them, bringing back many storylines and characters who had been dead for years. The life entity also revives the Anti-Monitor, freeing him of the Black Lantern battery. Life itself is then subsequently attacked again following the event during the follow-up event called Brightest Day, but our heroes managed to hold off the forces of Necron once more from contaminating life itself. In contrast, on Oa, the Lanterns of the universe all hold off Krona from forcing emotions into life with the intent to evolve life against its will throughout the multiverse. Not long after the events of Brightest Day, the Guardians no longer believe emotion should be used to enforce order after Hal Jordan manages to kill Krona in the last event. This is a feat the Guardians of the Universe considered impossible, as they are all immortal and Krona was no exception. In response, they decided to raise an army to conquer the universe using the powers of Volthoom, the first Lantern they had captured billions of years ago. Kyle Rayner becomes the White Lantern in order to stop the Guardians of the Universe, but they manage to accidentally unleash Volthoom, who threatens to rewrite all of existence with the very powers that created creation itself. With the help of Necron, they eliminate Volthoom's physical form by sending him to Necron's realm, but the majority of the Guardians die for their actions at Sinestro and Atrocitus' hands. But a new set of Guardians, who actually were overlooking Volthoom's chambers in the first place, managed to take over the role of Guardians of the Universe from this point on. An undetermined amount of time following the whole Volthoom event, Barry Allen's desire to change his mother's death causes him to go back in time and change this moment. This action changes all time past this moment, causing the FlashPoint reality to occur, deleting the prior timeline. Barry undoes his prior changes to the timeline, which force reality to change once more, ending the post-crisis era and creating the new 52 continuity by rebooting all worlds in this canon event. Dr. Manhattan also begins to steal and organize this new reality to fit his machinations by starting to remove the Golden Age Earth 2 figures from the history of the post-crisis Earth 1 and 2 fused timeline. This causes a new Earth 2 in this specific era that is owed to Darkseid because of his agreement with Highfather. This Earth 2 has a very different timeline from the original Earth 2, much like the other worlds from the Orrery, which are always reborn anew every time they are destroyed or when reality is restructured. Following the events of Flashpoint, the ultimate version of Brainiac and his minion pits hypertime realities and timelines against one another in an ultimate Mortal Kombat multiversal tournament for the lulz. This event is called Convergence, and it is considered a canon Crisis event, but don't worry, nobody remembers what happens inside this event, nor do they care, due to the 8,000 tie-ins and rather lackluster plot that it delivered. But it does give us the return of post-Crisis Superman sneaking into the new New 52 behind the scenes with Lois Lane, not that you'll find out about that until DC Rebirth, but we also have the survivors of the New 52 Earth 2 and in time displaced Parallax Hal Jordan, who manages to escape into the modern age here. In undetermined time after the FlashPoint event, the Hand of the Great Darkness that shook the Hand of Light during the events of Swamp Thing manages to fall off and becomes a separate entity known as the Empty Hand. The Empty Hand continues to exert the influence of the Great Darkness despite the deal the Great Darkness has with the Light, and decides to test the variant superheroes of the entire multiverse. The extra multiversal entities known as the Gentry are formed from the remains and suffering of Multiverse 2, or the original multiverse that the Anti-Monitor destroyed in the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. Afterwards, they manage to invade the new DC multiverse and begin turning one specific reality amongst its orrery of worlds into a hellish plane. The many heroes of the multiverse all team up with one another, and as this multiversal threat grows past even just the confines of that world. Eventually the heroes manage to confine the Gentry and Empty Hand to only that world, and there the Gentry construct some sort of multiversal doomsday weapon called the Oblivion Machine. Its purpose at this time is unknown, and the Gentry await Empty Hand's mysterious plans to come to fruition via that Oblivion Machine. The map of the multiverse was also canonically given to us during this event by Grant Morrison in this college-level class comic called Multiversity, which helped consolidate a lot of the cosmologies into something as simple as just this map. An undetermined amount of time after the Multiversity event, the Amazon Daughter of Darkseid summons both Darkseid and the Anti-Monitor for an all-out war, which eventually leads to the death of Darkseid at the hands of the Anti-Monitor utilizing the anti-life equation. This action tampers with the multiverse up to the Monitor sphere, causing the Justice League to change into gods for a short period. Mobius, or the Anti-Monitor, his name is revealed, and he actually turns out to be the original creator of the Mobius chair that Metron, the new god, sits on. I mean, duh, that's where it gets its name from. And afterwards, things manage to return to some sense of normalcy for pretty much all of the heroes involved, but Wonder Woman, who remains a god, and Darkseid, whose age is distorted for quite some time after this. The Anti-Monitor's form was also destroyed, but as with all of the Brothers 3, they simply return to the 6th dimension to reform, and he is no exception. The Justice League Dark is formed, and it finds itself in a near-crisis-like event. An entity known as Prayala, who is an aspect of the Great Darkness, begins its assault on reality by attempting to drag the multiverse into her being of nothingness, and she succeeds in doing so. Due to the work of the Justice League Dark, the multiverse is reborn from the powers of some of the strongest magicians in the multiverse inside Prayala, which destroys her and manages to return existence back to where it was. An undetermined amount of time after the events of the Darkseid War, multiple interventions of time managed to restore much of the post-crisis timeline when Wally West, the Flash that replaced Barry Allen originally, reaches out to Barry Allen, and Barry Allen manages to remember Wally West from the prior timeline and history of the prior multiverse. His reality-shattering event causes the new era of comics called DC Rebirth, which ends the FlashPoint or New 52 era. This was a breath of fresh air for all of those who disliked the New 52 era for changing some of their favorite concepts and ideas in verse, and dragged in arguably the best parts that were left behind during that New 52 reboot from post and pre-crisis eras, creating a combined continuity for pretty much everything in DC. Owlman manages to remove Metron from the Mobius chair, but unfortunately both are unalived by Dr. Manhattan, who doesn't want them getting involved in him manipulating the multiverse. Around 2 years before Infinite Frontier, the Dragon Barbados, who is a former agent of the World Forger, attempts to subsume creation into the Dark Multiverse in the Dark Knight's Metal event. This event introduces us to the Dark Multiverse, explains dark matter, the Bat Who Laughs, gives us new DC metals and how they function. This Crisis event set up everything for years to come with Scott Snyder at the helm, and actually gave us a good origin story for Nth Metal that makes sense. The strongest metal in existence, known as 10th Metal, was utilized from the Forge of Creation at the center of the Dark Multiverse to fight Barbados, but it was accidentally this action that tore a hole in the source wall due to how powerful it was. This hole in the source wall threatens to end existence as we know it if our multiverse cannot manage to solve the situation soon. An undetermined amount of time after the Dark Knight's Metal event, the being known as the Upside Down Man manages to re-enter existence as a result of the hole in the source wall and threatens to destroy all of creation with his absurd power and avatars. He is defeated after great sacrifice from our heroes and is sealed inside Zatanna. He threatens his return should she fail him, and he himself had source powers, making him quite the dangerous threat in this event. An undetermined amount of time after the Dark Knight's Metal event, the hole in the source wall only proves to become more problematic as creation itself begins to rot. Soon, these powerful Source Titans step outside of the Source Wall and attempt to repair the Source Wall with powerful energies from prominent worlds inside DC, which included our Earth. The Ghost Sector, during this little extravaganza, manages to be released. And what exactly is the Ghost Sector? Well, it's pretty much all the worlds that were stolen by Brainiac, and they get released into the universe, making the universe even more mysterious, wise, entropic, and wondrous, just to be reflective of all these Source Titans walking outside of the wall and the energies that they actually require to fix the wall. Our heroes and villains team up to prevent the Source Titans from destroying Earth and these other worlds, but as a result, the Source Titans do not repair the Source Wall. And when the Source Wall continues to fracture and decay, the Green Lantern Corps manages to step up and continue to try to hold it together at the original place where the hole occurred from the Dark Knight's Metal event, but it's continuing to fracture and they can't hold it. An undetermined amount of time after the events of No Justice, Dr. Manhattan's alterations of the DC cosmology begin to become known to the heroes of Earth. During this event, Doomsday Clock, Manhattan finally enacts his ultimate theory of the multiverse and metaverse by engaging with Superman and the heroes of DC directly. When the Doomsday Clock hits 0, Dr. Manhattan tests his ultimate theory and destroys the multiverse. Manhattan then analyzes the reaction afterwards as the metaverse brings back our creation around the story of Superman. Now understanding the true purpose of the DC multiverse, Dr. Manhattan then undoes all the changes he made to the DC cosmos during the time he had while he was inside of it. Manhattan then leaves behind a child named Clark with some of his powers before fixing his own universe somewhere out there, then disappearing. An undetermined amount of time after the events of Doomsday Clock, heroes and villains find themselves targeted in their own sanctuary by that of Wally West, who murders his cohorts in their own psychiatric facility. This establishes the trend of Wally becoming more moored and limited due to all the alterations in his specific timeline, and having lost pretty much everything when his life was stolen from him in post-crisis via the effects of Dr. Manhattan. This story is called Heroes in Crisis, but don't worry, these events weren't Wally's fault because DC editorial later on retconned this like 700 times. An undetermined amount of time after the events of Doomsday Clock, the events of the 2018 Justice League begin to occur, with this being the focus on the Year of the Villains. Notable events during this time frame include Lex Luthor discovering the true forces that power the entire multiverse, both crisis and anti-crisis energies, discovering beings from beyond the Source Wall, discovering the true creator and origins of the multiverse named Perpetua, discovering Perpetua's goals, her prior multiverse, and the Source Wall manages to explode as Perpetua is freed from her prison. Later on, Lex Luthor becomes an apex predator and child of Perpetua, then recruits more supervillains to help Perpetua restructure reality. Reality becomes entirely distorted and destroyed due to Perpetua's actions of attempting to recreate her twisted former multiverse of crisis energies. Eventually, Perpetua rids herself of Lex Luthor in favor of the Batman Who Laughs as her second in command. After a multiversal spiritual enlightenment journey, Wally West becomes finally completely unmoored and gains access to the Mobius chair, which contains some of Dr. Manhattan's energies from when Manhattan managed to unalive Owlman and Metron when they were riding upon it. But it turns out this was actually all a trap by the Bat Who Laughs. Immediately after the events of the Justice League 2018 run, and 1 year before the events of Infinite Frontier, Perpetua continues to reshape existence to fit her desires. The death metal story begins with the Bat Who Laughs becoming the Darkest Knight by placing his brain into the body of a Batman who underwent a similar experiment to Dr. Manhattan. In this new form, Bat-Manhattan. He seeks more power, and after obtaining it, he seeks out Perpetua, starting a titanic battle that threatens all of existence. Elsewhere, Wonder Woman pleads with Superboy Prime to help out the forces of connective energies, the forces of truth, but Prime has already made a deal with the evil Batman. Soon Perpetua is defeated by the Darkest Knight, who plans on destroying all of existence. Without Perpetua concealing the multiverse, Perpetua's race, the Hands, become aware of what's happening and head to our multiverse. Convincing Superboy Prime to fight on their behalf, Superboy Prime immediately seeks out and fights the Darkest Knight, but unfortunately is killed at his hands after causing him to exert quite a bit of energy. Wonder Woman then journeys to the World Forge and gets a mega huge truth amp, combines it with the entire stories and histories of everyone and everything that exists inside DC, creating quite a cohesive continuity at this point in time. She then runs into battle with the rest of the heroes against the Darkest Knight and his forces. During this battle, the Hands arrive to witness what's happening and most likely destroy the multiverse. Throwing him into the Death Sun itself, the Darkest Knight is defeated by Golden Wonder Woman, but existence is already destroyed. Wonder Woman is then contacted in the nothingness afterwards from those from beyond. Reality, all of the multiverse, everything is rewritten by the judges and Hands to undo the recent events to the multiverse, but the source wall remains absent to allow the heroes to control their own stories and destinies from here. The multiverse forms into something larger than it ever has been as a result, in this new infinite frontier. The multiverse becomes a mini omniverse unto itself, with entire multiverses and infinite worlds being developed consistently and with no barriers to reach any of them, unlike what we had before with the Orrery of Worlds. Later on, Wonder Woman is taken and ascended for her actions by those who arrived. An undesignated point in time after death metal. In this new infinite frontier, Wonder Woman returns from her trip with the Hands and chooses to rescind her godhood despite the warnings of the horrific things that are on the way. Soon afterward, Darkseid eliminates the Quintessence, a group of protectors of the multiverse who often get in his way. Eventually, everyone in creation attempts to stop Darkseid, as he plans to control the entire multiverse by stopping any connection between the multiverse's worlds and other realms, by controlling the Great Darkness with a Black Lantern ring and lantern that he had found. With the new powers he gained from Earth Zero, or a fragment of the Great Darkness, Darkseid saw his chance to finally succeed in his mission to control all life in existence and sets these plans into motion. But due to the actions of the JSA, the Justice League Incarnate, and a Black Lantern Roy Harper, Darkseid's attempts to control these powers were prolonged. However, due to Darkseid's actions, Barry Allen, the Flash, is thrown at such high speeds being manipulated by Psycho Pirate and Darkseid that he cracks a hole into the Omniverse and he is lost in there. Later on, we come across the Flash, Barry Allen, in the clutches of a place we're familiar with, inside the Great Darkness, a place called Multiverse 2. Here, he meets a man known as Pariah, the same one who caused the first crisis that destroyed this multiverse, and he seems insane. During the events of Infinite Frontier, a rogue guardian of the universe named Koios has regrets for what his species had done by removing most of the magic of the universe oh so long ago, 10 billion years ago. Driven mad by this idea, Koios decides to unalive all the Guardians of the Universe and anyone of their species, the Malthusians, after amassing a ton of magical powers from the magical realms and people inside the God Sphere. Unknown to Koios, in a dark sector outside his view, John Stewart becomes an ascended being, a being of immeasurable power and the kinds of beings the Source wishes for all life to become. After a large battle, John manages to stop the Mad Guardian and creates a new central power battery with new source energies, and unfortunately he could no longer revive all the Guardians who managed to pass, or the Malthusians either. The universe without them finds itself in disarray with no leadership, as the Guardians of the Universe have always ran the Green Lantern Corps and protected creation. Without them, who will do it? Or will the very chaos the Guardians of the Universe attempted to bring order to 10 billion years ago return and become worse than before? Following up on that event, the Justice League Incarnate is officially reformed with Dr. Multiverse and President Superman at the helm. We also get a really good recap of the entire DC multiverse, so definitely check out issue 4 of this run, it's goated. Darkseid here schemes once more to control the crack in the Omniverse that the Flash made traveling into the Great Darkness. Once in control of this powerful hole, no pun intended, he wages war with the forces of the Great Darkness in our multiverse who are led by the ferocious Empty Hand. After a wicked battle, Darkseid is tricked into entering the realm of the Great Darkness and becomes the destructive hand of the Great Darkness. Pariah, the man manipulating things behind the scenes, makes himself known as somebody who is using the Great Darkness's powers and avatars as his new Dark Army. Pariah has been preparing for a new, darker crisis. Immediately following the Justice League Incarnate storyline, Pariah utilizes the powers he gains from the Great Darkness via his antimatter cannon he placed inside of it to lay waste to pretty much all of the major heroes, and then later on utilizing the Great Darkness chains, controlling most of the major villains inside of DC. Pariah didn't kill the heroes though. He did need the Justice Leaguers for their stories to help return the prior multiverse, Multiverse 2, back into existence. But why would Pariah want to do that? He wanted to do this because he felt it was his fault the original multiverse was destroyed, and on top of that, he's being manipulated, not directly but inadvertently, by the Great Darkness. This sparks the Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths event, where Pariah is utilizing the Dark Army of villains who he controls via those darkness chains to find more heroes for more stories he can draw from. Succeeding in creating the original worlds, the original multiverse after stealing the stories of the Justice League is reborn in Crisis Worlds, and utilizing the powers of the Flashes and the newly mega powerful Dr. Light, they begin illuminating the darkness across our entire multiverse in order to save it. Pariah during this point in time gets eradicated, and the Dark Army as a result return to their original machinations, no longer bound by the Great Darkness's chains that were placed upon them. After this specific event, the Justice League decides to retire, and the Teen Titans take over as the prime hero team of DC. The United Planets, a brand new faction replacing the Guardians of the Universe as the leaders of the Green Lantern Corps, were inspired by Superman, and now they run the universe through an odd form of democracy and criminality. The United Planets are basically the Galactic Senate from Star Wars, but inside DC, and trust me, they have pretty much all the same problems, but with worse characters and more evil characters in every position you could imagine. So would you believe me that we're actually caught up? We actually made it back to DC history. Let's check here. Like, how many hours are we at? I gotta see, or not hours. How many minutes? Yo, 50 minutes? Yo, we're chilling at 50 minutes to explain not even every event in DC history. And it's important, if you've made it to here, which I'm gonna say probably 80% of people haven't, that this isn't going to be every event. This is just the majority events that I saw personally as the more significant events to my little trip and experience throughout all of DC's history. And obviously I have like more of like a Green Lantern lens, or like a format that I look at things. And I look at things through like a much larger perspective, where it's like, hey, we're these things that are affecting massive parts of the cosmology. That's what I want to talk about. Stories, people, and events that were kind of in those areas. So why don't you guys do me a huge favor? This is going to be rare. Not too many people make it to the end too, so this is going to be a sign, a testament to see who the real homies are. All right, let's find out if you guys know a bunch of really important events that I forgot. Comment your favorite ones down low, and if this video gets 150 likes, I'll actually produce that video talking about all the events that you guys were actually referencing. Because there's a lot of events that I didn't touch up upon because I was like, well, it didn't seem like it was too impactful to the overall course of things. So it is what it is. But be sure to like and subscribe down low. Become a member too, man. None of you guys are subscribing to me. Come on now. At least 80% of my people watching my videos need to be subscribing to this action. So you do you, like, subscribe, become a member, which helps me out a ton. Those are the guys who support me, and it's super easy to find the link on my channel or in the description. So check those out, homies. And yo, after this nightmare recording, I'm gonna leave this one to you guys, okay? We'll catch you next time, Lanterns. Please, please kill me after all this editing. Woo!
and creating events that affect the entire verse was the only way she theorized to decimate her source wall curse, and so she whispered madness to her child, the Anti-Monitor, driving him towards his revenge on his brother, the Monitor. A crisis on infant Earths is what he decided to grant, but her children were